So as we talked about before, this is the very beginning of our 8-week series. And this 8-week series is going to be all about recession-proofing our careers. I know for me personally, I was in technology when the tech bubble burst. I was on Wall Street during 9/11, and I was also in the mortgage industry during the financial crisis. So I don't know if I'm just really bad timing or I'm the bad luck charm or whatever the situation is, but I have found myself in massive, at the epicenter of just really big economic shifts throughout my entire career. And each time that happened, what I realized, of course, hindsight's always 20/20, is that during those moments of crisis, I was surging. And when my friends and my colleagues were getting let go, I was getting promoted. And so there is a way not to be a victim to economic circumstances. There is a way to pivot into something where you are on the winning side of this, because whenever there's uncertainty, there's winners and losers. So you have to decide who you want to play for. And so what I wanted to do this, while we're doing this 8-week series, is really break down the critical elements that I want you to start to think about, not just for now. And, are we in a recession? Are we not? Is it inflation? Is it stagflation? Like, we hear all these things that are going on in the markets. So just in case, these things turn bad for you, I want you guys to know the warning signs. And I want you to know what to think about and how to always stay on top of what's happening. So tonight, what we're going to be talking about is what are those warning signs? Because they're really, really important to pay attention to. Because nobody likes bad news. And nobody wants to think, oh, this is going to happen to me. Until all of a sudden you look around and there's massive carnage everywhere. And you're like, okay, now what do I do? And so tonight what we're going to do is we're going to talk about the 4 different areas that you need to pay attention to in terms of the overall warning signs of, am I in a situation where I might end up on the outside looking in? And then of course, we'll talk about what do we do in the situation where you are on the outside looking in? And we're going to talk about how do you know if your industry is in trouble and what do you look for? We're going to talk about how do you know if your company is in trouble and what to look for. And then we're going to bring it a little closer to home in terms of how about your department or your role? And then ultimately, how do you know if you are in trouble? And, so I want to make sure that you guys are prepared to know those warning signs, because that little, smoke that's coming out of your garbage can in the corner that you like to ignore could turn into a dumpster fire before you know it. And we don't want to, we know dumpster fires are a lot harder to deal with. So take great notes. Make sure you've got your questions ready. Go ahead. If you've got questions, go ahead and pop them in the chat window. I'm happy to answer them as we go through this. But the very first thing you want to think about is really at a macro level within your industry, because industries get impacted. And we know, during COVID, we saw all kinds of shifts through the past economic crises that I was talking about, lots of shifts that were going on in terms of companies that were on fire are no longer in existence. And, companies that were suffering found a way to pivot. And so take a look at what's going on in your industry globally, because economic conditions accelerate in certain regions more than others, or earlier to see those signs of danger more than others. So really make sure you take a look at that global landscape of your industry. You want to also, another thing is obviously keep an eye on the markets. So this is a great time to, watch CNBC in the morning, see what's going on, dive into the Wall Street Journal. You don't have to understand stocks and all the technology or all the financial details, but know what's going on in your sector. And an easy way to do that is there's investment engines that are called EFTs. And they're like mutual funds, like a more modern version of a mutual fund, and they go by industry and they go by segments. And so keep an eye on the EFTs in terms of what's on the stock market within your particular industry to see how those EFTs are traded. Because that's going to give you an indication, if everybody is selling, that this is not a good thing, right? So you want to make sure that you get a sense of the volume and what's going on there. And then also pay attention in terms of where that volatility within your particular industry may be. You want to pay attention to the industries that are connected. And so if you're, let's say, in a hospital, you want to take a look and say, okay, what's going on in the pharmaceutical industry? What's going on in the at-home healthcare industry? And so make sure that you're really looking at the whole landscape to see what types of industries are being impacted and how is that all going to shake out in terms of what's happening within your industry. I know before I moved into financial services, I was in the staffing business. And we did project work and staffing, but this was during Y2K and the .com era, where people were just throwing money at us like they just could not give us money fast enough to protect them against Y2K and to get a website put up, right? And so this was the big thing, and we were just making money hand over fist. But as things started to slow down, as the world didn't come to an end on January 1st, 2000, we noticed that there was a very, very quick shift in terms of, people were ending contracts early. Our compression on rates happened almost overnight. So all of these things started to happen because there was no longer that demand, right? All of these .coms turned into .bombs. And so that's when I knew I need to get out of here. Because A, this is no longer fun. And B, this is not going to be a place for a longer term role for me in terms of leadership role. And that's when I bounced into financial services. So it's like, that's actually growing, that's on fire. There's a lot of opportunity there. So had I not paid attention to that, and had I stayed in the staffing and the project, professional services industry that I was in, every one of my peers that did that ended up getting fired within a year. And then are still to this day bouncing from role to role to role within that same industry, just because they haven't found a way out. So just pay attention to what's going on in terms of that volatility within the industry. The next thing I want to talk to you about is your company. How do you know if your company is actually in trouble? Which I think is really important to think about. And I found a clip with Susie Orman from CNBC that really talks about some things. So I want to play this clip for you guys so you can see what I'm talking about. Then we'll go ahead and bring it closer to home so you can apply it to what you're doing as well. Let's do this. So hopefully you guys can see my screen.
From your desk, sometimes it's hard to keep a clear picture of how your company's doing. And if it's struggling, you might not know it until the severance packages start showing up, if you're lucky. Here are the red flags to watch out for, and some classic signs that show your company might be going under. Look around. Are there more executive level meetings than ever before? It's time to get worried if there's no explanation of what they're talking about, and it's even more worrisome if HR is attending. Look out for hiring and pay freezes, especially if top execs are taking pay cuts themselves. And if major customers start to leave, maybe you should start thinking about an exit. The company can't survive without revenue, and neither can you. There's some subtle signs, too, that you should also be watching out for. The playbook will start changing rapidly. A new vision, mission, strategy, tactics. These are all signs of frantic, high-level disagreement over the company's direction. Sort of how you start driving faster when you're lost. A brain drain. Star employees may start to exit. And while everyone wishes them well, no one at the top talks about filling their spots. Projects will be indefinitely postponed without explanation. This is typically a sign executives know there is no future. And if a consulting firm shows up, or an all-company meeting is called, I'm sorry, it's usually too late. It's over. So what do you do if these sound familiar? You have two options. One, get out as fast as you can and look for another job. Or two, you can wait it out. Do the best you can as the ship goes down. This allows you to say in your cover letters going forward, I lost my job as part of my company's bankruptcy or acquisition. This allows you to move on with dignity and candor. Look, either option is hard to do during a company collapsing around you. But if you know the signs, you can be the one who made the smart decisions first.
So if any of those things are going on in your space, pay attention. The other things that you want to think about in terms of if your company is, and it may not be going out of business, right? The worst thing is they may be staying in business and trying to cut their way to prosperity, which is typically what happens during a times of economic downturns. They're not going to sell everything and close up shop, but they are going to continue to do death by 1,000 paper cuts and getting people, getting rid of expenses, resources, the work stays the same, and the number of people continue to go down. So if you're working for a public company, then you want to keep an eye on cash flow. You want to keep an eye on debt. They all have to report this in terms of their quarterly or their annual filings. You know, if you have access to revenue numbers, you know, how are the sales doing? Are sales going up? Are they staying flat? Are they, you know, are they going down? What's going on with the margins in the business? So what's the profitability like in the business compared to what it was last year, the year before, or whatever the case may be? The other things you want to look at is customer retention. So typically clients have this spidey sense that there's a problem. And no one wants to stay doing business with another company that doesn't have long-term viability. And so if you start to see, like Susie had said, you know, if you start to see some of those clients leaving, pay attention to that, because that is not just a coincidence. It's definitely a warning sign. And then really take a look at that employee turnover. When you start to see people leaving at all levels, and it's hard to tell now because there's a lot of people that are just leaving because they don't want to, you know, work in a normal corporate environment anymore. But if you're starting to see top talent walk out the door, if you're starting to see executives say, you know what, I think it's time for me to retire, or whatever the case may be, you definitely want to pay attention to those things. And again, it's not all like, okay, the sky is falling, we're going to be out of business in 6 months, but these are definitely warning signs you do not want to ignore. The third thing I want to go over is how can you tell if your department or if your role is at risk? Because a lot of times during times of recession and during times of cutbacks, companies contract and they start to move from a decentralized model, which is what you can do when times are good and you've got lots of money, to a centralized model. So it's like, we do not need 4 different departments doing the same thing. And so what you want to pay attention to is who is doing the same work that your department is doing within the company. We used to call it shadow functions. So I, you know, give you an example. When I was, you know, a COO for a business unit at Bank of America, I would have a lot of people in my office in terms of people who would handle communications, people who would handle HR things, people who would handle finance, you know, compliance issues, things like that. Now, there were departments in the bank that did this for a living, but they sucked. And so I hired my own people to do it better. Now, in times of difficulty, when you have to cut back, guess what? Those duplicate functions are the first ones to go. Because at the end of the day, having it done according to my standards was a luxury item. I had the daily blocking and tackling that my team had to do. So if I did have to just, you know, spend more time with HR or legal or finance or whoever to just do the job right, then that's what I had to do. So if your department or if your function is largely duplicative to another function within the organization that does this for a living, you're at risk. So just pay attention to that and see how that shows up for you. The other thing is obviously pay attention to budget cuts. You may not be privy to know that there's some really big budget cuts that are going on within the organization, but here's some clues that this is happening. When open recs get closed, when people quit and you're not allowed to backfill, when promotions are frozen, when compensation decisions are pushed down the road. There's a lot of mid-year compensation conversations going on right now. So if those things aren't happening, then pay attention, because you know that could be happening on a company level, but in many cases it also happens at that departmental level. When you've got those big strategic projects and they get pulled, or you feel like they're really being stalled, that's a warning sign for sure, because that's a sign that strategy is changing. And so you're not part of it. And then if you're hearing the rumor mill, I always had this saying, right? When I was back in corporate, and the saying was, those who don't know talk, and those who know don't talk. Right? So all the little rumor mills are all, you know, everybody's like talking. I'm like, no one knows anything, but everyone's got an opinion. Right? So I would recommend that, you know, do not get sucked into the rumor mill, because the people who are chatting about it have no clue what's going on. But do pay attention to how people are acting. Right? So pay attention to how your boss is acting, how, you know, depending on how many, you know, layers up you're going, how the chain of command is going, what's going on at the leadership level. If there's normally a lot of communication and a lot of conversation and things get really quiet, that's usually an indication that there's trouble brewing. So just pay attention to, actions more than the rumor mill. Every now and then, you'll get a nugget that turns out to be true in the rumor mill, but we all know that a blind squirrel finds a nut too once in a while. So, just don't get sucked into that water cooler talk and stuff like that. Just pay attention to what's going on. And then the last thing we want to talk about in terms of knowing the warning signs is, how do you know if you are personally at risk? Because there have been several situations in my career where I knew my department was not going to make it. And, but that didn't mean that I had to go out with them, right? And kind of throw the baby out with the bathwater. And so what I ended up doing is really paying attention to the sinking ship that I was on, and then finding other opportunities within the organization that weren't going through the same level of churn and the same level of friction that my department was going through. And so if you find that you're used to sitting at the cool kids table and all of a sudden you're not invited to these meetings anymore, you're in trouble, right? And you know what I'm talking about. You've seen these people in their careers where they kind of get sidelined and they get assigned to like special projects, which is usually like, hey, this is a warning sign to go find a new role somewhere. And so you want to make sure that you're not in that special projects category, especially during times of recession and cutbacks. If you find that people are not taking you as seriously, it's like everybody else got the memo but you that you're on your way out the door. And so when you used to be able to say things and people would take action, and if now all of a sudden no one seems to be paying attention, again, that's an issue. So pay attention to what's not being said in the room as much as what is being said. And then I really think you should focus in on your instincts. Because a lot of us tend to, Pollyanna, sky is falling, gloom and doom, but those spidey senses actually mean something. So, check in with what your gut is telling you and back that up with what you're experiencing. Because if you're getting excluded, or if all of a sudden your work is being criticized when you used to be a rock star, or you find that, you're just not in that flow, then there's a good chance that you are going to be on the outside looking in, and not of your own devices. So just pay attention to kind of how that flows. So during times of financial uncertainty, during times of recession, cutbacks, the uncertainty is everywhere. I mean, we've had an insane year between, supply chain issues and inflation and food prices and gas prices and all of that stuff. And so, the impact to what's happening in terms of just the overall ecosystem and the financial ecosystem is significant. And when you look at your industry and kind of check that off first in terms of, is the industry solid? When you look at your company and say, how is my company faring, regardless of what's going on in my industry, and then your department and your role to see how safe are we in terms of, making an impact, having that high value, those types of things. And then ultimately, how am I doing personally? How am I showing up personally? All of those things really come into play in terms of trying to figure out, am I at risk or not? And what are the warning signs that I need to worry about, or are there warning signs that I have to worry about? And so let's say that these red flags or these yellow flags are popping up everywhere, or only popping up in a few areas. What do you do about it? So if you really do feel like you're in a position where this might not end well for me one way or another, then here's some things that I want you to think about. I want you to pay attention, but don't panic. The other thing that you need to do, and you should be doing this anyway, regardless of whether or not you feel you're at risk, but you should be doubling down on continuing to grow and build your network. Because you all know that, that is the holy grail to career success. And so make sure that you are reaching out to people before you need them. Because if you reach out with your hand held out saying, oh, got caught on the wrong side of a merger and acquisition, or I got let go on the latest round of, riffs, then that's a much different conversation and a much less comfortable conversation than the ones that really talk about, hey, how you doing? What's going on in your industry? We're getting our clocks cleaned over here. How about you? That kind of stuff. You also want to talk to people who are customers of either your company or who are customers, of your competitors. Because when you start to see the perspective of where you're sitting from the outside looking in, you get a whole fresh perspective. And so make sure that you're not always just internally and focused internally, but talk to your customers, talk to your vendors, talk to your suppliers, and get their take on what's happening. Because vendors will tell you, my contract got cut in half, or we were asked to, give back a certain percentage of our margin. I know Uber is one of my large clients, and they're struggling, like many people are right now. And so they actually put in a program where if you discounted your services, they would pay you faster. Another creative way to save money, and get their vendors paid a little bit faster as well instead of net 45. So when you're talking to vendors and you're talking to customers, just use that as additional data to really get a sense of what's going on within your space. The other thing is, if you're in that situation where you think that either you or your role is at risk, then make sure that you really focus, and you want to stay within the organization that you're in, then make sure that you really are focused for internal sponsorship. Because here's what happens when a department gets decimated. It is a cage match for the top talent. So every time we knew that we were dismantling a department, and we knew that, okay, 40% of the team was going to be let go, and then the rest of them were going to stay. And we always knew who we wanted. I mean, it was like draft day for the NFL, right? Like, who wants who? And so make sure that you're a top pick. And the way you make sure you're a top pick is make sure your work is highlighted. Make sure that you are staying tight with the people who influence how things get done within your organization more broadly. And make sure that your skills are seen as transferable. So if you are known for something within your organization, within your department, I guarantee you other departments need that too. So you want to make sure that your brand and how people perceive you are correct. That there are people advocating for you when you're not in the room, and that you're seen as a utility player that can easily be moved from, one situation to another with a high expectation that you'll have the same level of success and that you'll make the same impact that you would be making, in the current role that you're in. And then I think last but not least, make sure your LinkedIn profile is up to snuff. That is the first place people look every single time. And so it doesn't matter whether, somebody says, oh, you got to talk to this person, he's great or she's great. Very first thing they do is they're going to cyber stalk you and check out your LinkedIn profile. And if you're all over the map and you look like, you just rolled out of bed in terms of your profile, they're not going to call you, no matter how many times people tell you they're awesome. So this is your first impression. This is your first handshake. It doesn't have to be perfect, but it's got to be good. So make sure that you go into your LinkedIn profile and get it to a point where you feel like it's respectable, where it's a good representation of what you're about and what you can deliver. That way, as your name is coming up, as you're part of the conversation, or you start to put out feelers just to have a plan B, then when they go there, what they see is something that they want to lean into and that they want to get a little bit more. Again, it doesn't have to be rock star status, but does have to be good. So just to kind of reiterate some of the key points, just so if you guys are taking notes, obviously you'll get the replay as well, so we can talk about that. But in terms of industry, you want to look at the markets, look at industry-specific EFTs, see what's going on within those in terms of buying and selling, and then make sure that you're looking at the global landscape within your industry and that you're looking at the ecosystem to see what's happening up and downstream. In terms of your company, I think Susie gave us some really good pointers in terms of paying attention to what's going on with leadership, special projects, but also dig into the financials. So if you're within a publicly traded company, that's easy to do. If it's a private company, it's a little harder to do. So pay attention to revenue numbers and margin in terms of, and expenses in terms of budget cuts and things like that. For your department, make sure that what you do is unique and that you're not a duplicative function that can be easily, done by another group. So you want to make sure that that value is still there. Typically, the closer to the money you are, the safer you are, right? So in terms of revenue. So if you find that you're in tech, or if you find that you're, further away from the client, then you really want to make sure that your value is connected and that people can see what you do. And then personally, make sure you stay really connected and that you are seen as a key player within the organization. And that, if you get those spidey senses and you're not invited to the cool kids table for lunch anymore, then pay attention to that, because that's usually a pretty big warning sign. So hopefully this gives you at least some ideas on what to pay attention to. What issues on the, on the field of play that you're on right now should you be dialing into? And then make sure that you've always got a plan B. Because they're not going to worry about you having a plan B. So you need to worry about having a plan B. That's the most important part. So I'm going to go ahead and ask everybody to go ahead and come off of mute. And cameras, if you can, because I'd love to start to field some of the questions that you have. So Susan, while people are getting organized, anything else you want to add to that? Anything that I missed?
No, I think that what was going through my mind, and I've been through this a couple of times, is all of that's quite applicable as well to when your company's getting ready to sell. Mm-hmm. I've been downsized twice in those scenarios. So it's not just the recession, but it's also when your company's getting ready to sell.
Yeah, absolutely. And for those of you that may be in listen only mode, feel free to, pop questions in the chat window as well.
Well, another place that you can get information is if you become buddies with the accountant.
Yes, that's the people that you never talk to, right? Something you got to make sure that they're your best friends.
I say that because I'm an accountant.
Yes, exactly. So you're the first line of sight into trouble.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Nate, it's good to go ahead, Jim.
I was going to say, I love the line about the rumor mill. The ones who don't know are doing all the talking, and the ones who know aren't saying anything. It's so true.
Yeah. Yes.
Also, if you start to see secret meetings, secret offsites and stuff like that, same, but yeah.
So for those of you, that does anybody feel like they're seeing any of the warning signs in the companies that they're in now? You can pop that in the chat, or you could come off of mute either way.
Well, that's kind of why I chose the profession that I'm in, because I knew it would always be recession-proof. Companies always need accountants.
That is true. Yep, especially ones with law degrees. That comes in really handy. Right?
The only thing, oh, someone's talking.
Go ahead.
The only time I experienced anything close to this was when I worked at FCIC, which is a huge defense contractor, and they were relocating their headquarters from San Diego to McLean, Virginia. But that would entail layoffs doing that move. And so when they first start, you're right, like there was secret meetings happening behind closed doors, and then the buzzword was reorganization.
Okay, so that was a code word, right?
Yeah.
And
when I was in that meeting, I was like, when the first meeting where they had the all hands, everyone involved, I was just sitting there going, okay, I know what reorganization means. And it was interesting to see how other people were interpreting that word.
Yeah. Jim, go ahead.
So you said look for star employees leaving. And I think that's very true, but I also think key employees, when you see vice presidents, I mean, they may not be stars, but they're high up there. When they start leaving, I think it's another sign. Absolutely.
Because they are privy to some of those conversations ahead of time, right? And some of those warning signs ahead of time. So yes, as you start seeing key leaders exit the organization, then that's usually, it can be an indication for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So Christina, I know you've been through crazy times with the industries that you've worked in. So how do these resonate with you in terms of what you've experienced on the ground? Christina B. I forgot we got two Christinas tonight. I was like, oh, wait a minute.
I've been fortunate enough not to personally experience most of it. I did see when I was with Barnes and Noble, I did see some of that, but that had to do more with, there was a change of leadership that took the company in a direction that was different. We're pretty different than what had been before. Not kind of the natural progression of change that we've been seeing, but something really abrupt. And a lot of long-term employees, because that's a place where a lot of people had worked for 10 plus years. And a lot of long-term employees left behind some of that. And I think they would have seen more damage done had they not sold the business to somebody else who seems to have a good mind for turning it around. But the priorities had changed to things that many of us thought were wrong. And so a lot of people abandoned ship. There was only one real, we called it the Valentine's Day Massacre because it occurred in February. But it wasn't actually on Valentine's Day, but that's what we called it. And it was the first time I experienced it with Barnes & Noble, where they eliminated positions without warning.
Wow.
And so that, on one particular day, all staff in those roles were informed that they were losing their jobs. And so that was, and we didn't really see that coming, because at the store level, the district manager would reach out to the store manager, but the rest of the staff weren't informed about anything. Unless you saw a manager, unless you happened to see the store manager in an office crying or something, you didn't know it was coming.
Oh, no.
Well, and I also think the other thing too is pay attention to where HR is hanging out, right? So if a lot of these meetings are going on with the execs and HR happens to be in there, yeah, that's no bueno. That never ends well for most people anyway, right? Just something to think about. And it's not really designed to just make us all panicked. Right, this series is designed to be smart about how we manage our career. And for any of you who have been with me for more than 5 minutes, you know that this is all about becoming the CEO of your career. And when you are the CEO of your career, treat it like a business. And so if you're sitting here and it's my Tammy Incorporated, and it's my business, and I see that there is trouble. As a business owner, it's your responsibility to understand where that trouble is and navigate either through or around it. And so to assume that we can just sit here and be loyal and hope for the best and, everything will work out, it doesn't, right? More often than not, it doesn't work out, at least, not in your favor. So you need to be able to really be aggressive and ambitious to say, I'm not going to end up on the wrong side. And I would rather be more vigilant in knowing what's going on around me so I can prepare for making the pivots that I need to make than, sit here and wait for change to come find you, because it will, right? Your world is always going to change. The question is, do you want to be the one to change it, or do you want someone else to do it for you? And I think those are the big pieces that are important to think about as you pay attention to these warning signs and try and figure out, okay, what do I do about it? And without a strong plan B, because right now is a great time to have a strong plan B, because this is really weird dichotomy going on with, markets are down, inflation's up, prices are up, all the things, but yet the employment shortage is significant. And so you're still at the advantage in terms of being able to choose the organizations that you want to work in. So it's not like, okay, everybody's laying everybody off, then unemployment is going to go through the roof and no one's going to ever get a job again for the next 5 years until we get through this cycle. This is a really interesting, at least in my professional career, the first time I've seen this, where we do have economic pressures because things have been out of control for too long, but the labor market is still strong. And even if you're not impacted, and even if you're like, okay, all hell's breaking loose in my area, in my industry, whatever, and you're hearing all these pressures and everybody's getting laid off, but you get to stay and you do all those things, like, do you really want to work for a losing team? Or would you rather move and pivot to an industry that's exciting? because when there's winners or losers, there's always some winners on the other end. And so where would you rather be? Like on the Titanic or, on one of Elon Musk's, rocket ships heading to wherever he's going next time. So think about that in terms of, what'd you say, Jim?
I said neither.
Neither, yeah. You get my point, right? In terms of pick your, choose your path is really what I'm trying to say. And just in terms of not letting things just happen, but pay attention and have a good plan. And, we're always here for you if you need it. So in terms of, oh, hang on a second, I think we do, or my company does have some of the warning signs, or I'm feeling personally at risk for whatever reason, make sure that you lean in and don't ignore it. And, activate as fast as you can without panicking to just make sure you've got the right resources around you to support you in being able to make whatever adjustments you're going to need to make to end up on the winning side for yourself. It's also a really good time to check in on how you define success for you. Anytime we have an opportunity for change, we have an opportunity to change what we want and what we think is important and what we value. So these times are also really good to check in and say, what is it that I really want? Jim's a shining example of that in terms of, long time in a toxic environment, decided December is a great time to say, sorry, I'm out of here. And so he's enjoying some pool time and some recharge time to redefine what he sees as the successful next step, which I think is fantastic. So use this time to check in and really recalibrate what you want and why, and what's important for you there. So are there any other, questions or comments that you guys want to share before we wrap up? Anything else? No. Okay. Well, hopefully this gave you some things to think about today. I'd love to, get an email from each of you telling me what the first 3 things you're going to do based on our conversation today to make sure that you're always on top of things. And then next week, as the second part of our series, what we're going to cover is how to adapt to change and become the MVP of your team. So let's figure out how you turn into that rock star when everyone else is hiding under their desks, hoping that they don't get fired. So this is a great time for you to surge on a personal level, and that really does come through adapting to change. So we'll be talking about that next week. So it's same bat time and same bat channel. So we'll see you guys Wednesday evening.
Thank you, Tammy.
All right. Thanks, Christina.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, guys.